Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Sukkah Daf Mem Aleph contains two Mishnayos. From the beginning of the daf until the first Mishnah, concludes the Gemara's discussion of the Machlokes of Yochanan and Rabbi Elazar as to how you transfer Kedusha off Shemitah produce. Then the Mishnah introduces us to the topic of when the lulav was taken, which days of Sukkos in the Beis Hamikdash and the rest of Eretz Yisrael during the times of the Beis Hamikdash and when there was no Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara will focus a lot of discussion on a takana that was made as to when one is allowed to start eating new crops, chadash, from the bringing of the Karban HaOmer when there was no actual Karban HaOmer, or from the day of the Karban HaOmer. Now, the second Mishnah will introduce us to the topic of carrying the lulav to the shul on Shabbos, and the Gemara will focus on the halacha about using a lulav which is not yours in case you pick up somebody else's lulav. So let's begin the daf Yitzina Machlokes, which we've been discussing, as to how one transfers Kedusha off Shemitah produce. You know that Shemitah produce has to be eaten or consumed in a normal way. It cannot be used in a non-consuming or non-proper fashion. That means that sometimes you want to get the Kedusha off the Shemitah produce. How do you do that? So there's a machlokes between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yochanan. According to Rabbi Elazar, it can only be transferred through sale. Only if you sell the produce does the Kedusha transfer onto actual money. According to Rabbi Yochanan, you could even just transfer it. You could say that this is mechol on that. Now, the original fruits never lose their Kedusha. That's always the story. But it does transfer to the thing that you're transferring to. Now, we had seen this Machlokes in Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Yochanan. We had brought a brisa to support each one. The brisa that supported Rabbi Yochanan clearly said you can transfer, it uses the word mischala, you can transfer Meiser Sheni or Shvius, Kedusha onto money. And we had seen a brisa which supported Rabbi Elazar because it went through a long list of the transferring of Kedusha from one item to the next, to the next, to the next. In each case, it said it has to be through a sale. Now, Rashi wants to qualify this machlokes. He wants to limit it, and the Gemara is going to have two versions because the first one you will have problems with. So the Rashi says the machlokes is only about the original Shemitah fruit, how you transfer the Kedusha of the original Shemitah fruit onto something else. There's an argument whether it can happen through chilul or only through sale. However, everybody agrees that once you're past the original Kedusha, once it's already transferred Kedusha, something which received Kedusha Shvius through transfer, you can definitely transfer that further through chilul. And Rav Ashi says, why then is the Mishnah that supported Rabbi Eliezer, why does it use the term purchase? Why does it say you have to transfer through purchasing each step of the way in its long list of steps? That's because the first step, it had to be a purchase, like we're saying, because this Mishnah holds like the opinion that the first step has to be transferred only through sale, and therefore it used the term sale and all the other ones just because it used the word sale in the first step as well. Now, Ravina has a kasha on this, and that is because we have a Mishnah which clearly says that it can only be transferred through sale, and it's talking about one of the later steps. And according to Rav Ashi's explanation, nobody holds it away. What's the Mishnah? The Mishnah says if somebody has a sal, has a coin, which has Kedusha Shvius, because it received Kedusha from somewhere else, so certainly talking about one of the later steps. A coin cannot grow with Kedusha Shvius. You want to use that coin to buy something which is not a proper Shvius purchase. You want to use it to buy a shirt. So what should you do? So the Mishnah says you should go to a storekeeper whom you trust, that he's going to follow along with your plan, and you should buy fruits with this money. That way the Kedusha will transfer off the coin onto the fruits. Then you should take the fruits and give it to the storekeeper as a gift, and he'll give you back your coin as a gift. That's why you need to trust him, because it has to be a gift, otherwise the Kedusha transfers back. And therefore you will now have a coin without any Kedusha, and he'll have fruits with Kedusha, and then he can eat them with halachas of Kedusha Shvius. So you see here it clearly says in order to get Kedusha off a coin, it definitely has to be through sale. So the Gemara therefore readjusts Rav Ashi. Again, he's still, according to the second version, making a split between the first Kedusha, the first item that grew Kedusha, and all other items that received Kedusha. But here the split is the other way. The first Kedusha is the one where he says that there is no machlokes. Everybody agrees you cannot transfer through chilul, you can only transfer through sale. The later ones, that's where there's a machlokes. Can you do chilul, can you just transfer it, or do you have to actually do a sale? Now the Gemara says, but hold on a second. But the brayso we had, which supported Rav Yechanan's opinion, said that you can transfer kedusha from Shvius through Chilul. Now, according to the way that we are describing it, it could not have been talking about the first pre, but there's no indication there that it's not talking about the first pre. So it says Rav Yochanan, no, it was talking about the later pre. It was not talking about the first pre, and the indication is that it also discusses Shvius and Meiser Sheni money. And Meiser Sheni, it's saying to transfer the kedusha of Meiser Sheni onto animals, karbanos, birds. Now you can't transfer it directly from fruits to animals and birds. That we know because the Torah says v'tarta kesav b'yadcha. You can only transfer it onto money, and then take that money and then transfer the kedusha onto animals when you come to Yerushalayim and you buy karbanos with it. So therefore, the Meiser Sheni definitely, when it's referring to the transferring of kedusha onto animals, is definitely talking about where it was kedusha on a secondary item where it was money. So the Shvius there also is also talking about kedusha on a secondary item, and that's why it says you could transfer it through chilul. Okay, this concludes this discussion. Now we get to the next Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses when the lulav was taken, when the 4 minim were taken, when and where, and another takana made by Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. It introduces us also to the concept of zeichel mikdash. So the Mishnah says as follows: as long as the Beis Hamikdash was standing, so in the Beis Hamikdash there was a mitzvah deraisa of taking the 4 species all 7 days of Sukkot, and outside the Beis Hamikdash it was only for the first day. From when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai made a takana to take the lulav all 7 days in the entire Yerushalayim. Zeichel Mikdash, we should remember how it was done in the Beis Hamikdash itself. Now he also made another takana, and that is that the day that the carbon omer is brought is usher to eat new crops. The halacha is as follows: anything which took root throughout the year you cannot eat until the carbon omer is brought, which is on the 16th day of the month of Nisan, the 2nd day of Pesach. Now, when the carbon was actually being brought, you couldn't eat it until the carbon was brought. Whatever time the carbon was brought, that's when you could eat it. When there was no carbon being brought, let's say even when the Beis Hamikdash was still standing, when there was no barley around, so the halacha is by sunrise, at least the halacha the Gemara is assuming at this point, was that by sunrise you're allowed to eat the new grain which took root since the last carbon was brought. Now, Yochanan ben Zakkai therefore said that the halacha should be that when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, you should be able to eat it from when the sun rises on the 16th, because there's no carbon omer going to be brought. However, he said you have to wait until the end of the day. That entire day is usher to eat new grain until after the 16th of the month of Nisan. That's when you're allowed to. So the Gemara begins, and it's going to spend most of its time analyzing Rav Yechanan's takana, but the Gemara first wants to know, how do you know that there's a concept of making a zeichel mikdash, doing something to remember how things were during the time of the Beis Hamikdash? The Gemara brings Rav Yechanan, who quotes a pasuk in Yirmiyah, Ki ela aruka lecha, I will bring you a cure, Omi makosecha arpa'eka, I will cure you from your wounds, No Hashem, Ki nidcha karulach, Tzion, He doresh ein la, because you were called, pushed away, and you have no one seeking out for you. So seeking out for you, there's no one seeking out for you. The Gemara says from there you see that there is supposed to be somebody seeking out for you. People should be seeking out the benefit of Yerushalayim and doing things zeicher l'mikdash. Okay, says the Gemara. Now, why did Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai make a takana that the entire day of the 16th of Nisan is usher to eat new grain which took root since the last Korban Pesach from last year? So the Gemara says, first approach, simple. The reason is because maybe the Beis Hamikdash will be built tomorrow, so for next year, people are going to remember that, I was allowed to eat the new grain beginning on the 16th, beginning on sunrise on the 16th, except now it's no longer true, because now a carbon omer will be brought, and you can't eat it until actual carbon omer was brought. Therefore, Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai said nobody should ever eat until the end of the day. That way, you know that even when the Beis Hamikdash will be built, nobody will eat before the carbon omer is actually brought. So Mara's kasha right away is, why do you have to wait till the end of the day? We know that there's a rule that you could assume that the carbon omer is always brought by chatzais. Somebody who doesn't know when it was brought exactly could assume it was brought by chatzais. So you should assume that you should only ask people from eating it until chatzais. By chatzais, when the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt, worst comes to worst, by chatzais it'll be brought for sure. So let people eat from after chatzais, and no tragedy will happen even when the first year that the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt. So Gemara says, maybe you'll tell me, we're afraid it's going to be rebuilt on the morning of the 16th of Nisan, and then we'll bring a carbon then, that day, and it will get pushed later than chatzos. and therefore people will eat from concise, it'll be too early. The Gemara says that can't be, because if the sun rose already, and the Beis Hamikdash wasn't built, then people could eat from sunrise, so that can't be it. So Gemara says no, maybe that the answer is that either it was built overnight, the night before the 16th, or at nightfall, if you say that the Beis Hamikdash can't be built at night, at nightfall just before. Rashi explains that it could be built because Hashem is going to send it down, even though we can't build the Beis Hamikdash ourselves at night, but Hashem is going to send it down already made. So it's going to be built late. It's going to arrive late, just before sunrise, either at night or at Shkia the day before. And then we won't have time to bring the carbon number before Chatzais because there's a lot of steps. It has to be picked and ground and is sifted a bunch of times. So we won't be able to get it done. That's the reason that the takana was made, not to eat anything until after the day of the 16th is over. Now the Gemara brings another approach. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai did not make a takana made Rabbanan. Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai held that the d'oraisa, even when there is no carbon omer being brought, you cannot eat new grain until the end of the day. And the reason is that he holds of the rule of ad b'chal. The Torah says ad etzamei mazeh. You cannot eat new grain until this day, until the day. That's in a situation where the omer itself, when the omer is brought, it says ad haviachem. When not, it says ad etzamei mazeh. So until this day, so Rav Yochanan holds ad b'chal. Even this day, you cannot bring it. Now that is the opinion known as the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is later than Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He came later, but it could be that this opinion was around earlier and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai held of it. So Gemara says it can't be because Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was attacked by Rabbi Yehuda for this reason. Rabbi Yehuda attacked Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and said, "Why are you making a gzera d'Rabbanon that you can't eat new grain on the 16th of the month of Nisan, and you're making a takana and gzera and everything? That's talacha d'oraisa. You can't eat it because ad b'chalal. The Torah said you can't eat it until the 16th, and it means even including the 16th. So you see that Rabbi Yehuda obviously held that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai held that it's not a d'oraisa, it's only a d'Rabbanan. So the Gemara says, okay, that was Rabbi Yehuda's mistake. Rabbi Yehuda understood that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying it as a takana, and it's not. It was really d'oraisa. So the Gemara asks, when it says hiskin, it says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was misakin. That means he instituted. So the Gemara says, no, it means darash for hiskin. Based on how he expounded the psukim, how he learned the psukim, that's how he set up what the halacha should be. Okay, now we get to our next Mishnah. This Mishnah discusses taking the lulav on Yom Tov, the first day of Yom Tov, when it's deraisa, when it falls on a Shabbos. Now, as we know, today we don't do that because we don't want people to carry it by mistake. The Gemara here does not work with that decree yet. The Gemara says that everybody would bring their lulav to shul before Yom Tov, and leave it there. And the next morning, Shabbos morning, they came to shul and they each looked for their own lulav. Each one wanted to make sure they have their own lulav, because the Chachamim say you cannot be to the mitzvah of an atilas lulav on the first day at least with somebody else's lulav. The rest of Yom Tov you could. Since it was the first day, you had to make sure to find your own lulav. Now Rabbi Yossi says halacha. He says on the first day of Yom Tov, if somebody accidentally carries his lulav because he's so involved with the mitzvah, he does not have to bring a carbon chatas based on that. You only have to bring a carbon chatas for violating an issa, where you had no excuse for violating it, except that you made a mistake here, you were involved in a mitzvah, so it's not a problem. Okay, now the Gemara says, now the Gemara begins, the Gemara wants to know, how do you know that you have to use your very own lulav? You can't use somebody else's lulav on the first day of Sukkot. The Gemara learns, the Brisa says, l'kachtem. Then the Torah says l'kachtem l'chem. L'kachtem says that everybody has to take it, not just one for everybody. And l'chem teaches that it has to be yours. Misha l'chem has to be from your own. That means you can't take a borrowed lulav, and you can't take a stolen lulav. You got to have your own lulav. If you don't have your own, somebody could give you one as a gift, but it's got to be yours. It has to be a gift. Now the Gemara brings an incident. The Gemara says Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Hasan, and Rabbi Kiva were traveling on a boat, and only Rabbi Gamliel had a lulav which he bought for 1,000 zuz. Rabbi Gamliel took it. It was there to the mitzvah, and he gave it to Rabbi Yeshua as a gift. Rabbi Yeshua gave it to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah as a gift. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah gave it to Rabbi Kiva as a gift, and Rabbi Kiva gave it back to Rabbi Gamliel. So the Gemara has some questions on the story. First of all, why do you have to tell me that he gave it back? What does that have to do with anything? The Gemara says that because I want to teach you the halacha. You could give something as a matana manas lahachzer. That's you're giving it as a gift, and it only counts as a gift if you give it back. On the condition you give it back. If you don't give it back, the gift itself is canceled, and the whole time you had it, it was a stolen object in your hand. Now, the Gemara says that in does not sound like a real gift at all, because it's a gift that can never stay by the person. The Gemara says, no, this is teaching me that it counts as a gift and it belongs to the second person. And that's what happened here. Rabbi Gamliel had given it as a gift, and everybody gave it as a matana all along, and that's why it says at the end that he gave it back. And the chiddush is that even a matana manasah counts as yours, and you are allowed to be able with that. Okay, the Gemara says, why do you need to tell me that he spent 1,000 zuz to buy the lulav? The Gemara says to teach you how important the mitzvah was to them. They're willing to spend so much on it. Okay, now the Gemara quotes Mar bar Meimar, who said to Rashi that my father, Meimar, when he was so connected to his Araminim, to his four species, that he held it during the davening. So the Gemara says, well, are you allowed to hold a precious, delicate object during tefillah? We have a Mishnah that says you're not allowed to hold tefillin or a Sefer Torah during Shemoneh Esrei. You're also not allowed to hold it while you're urinating it. You're not allowed to hold it while you're sleeping, not whether you're sleeping a long sleep or a short sleep. And Shmuel adds, you're not allowed to hold a knife or a plate or coins, anything that you're afraid to drop. So how are they allowed to hold? How was Meimar allowed to hold the lulav and esrog during Shemoneh Esrei? He's not going to be able to daven because he's afraid to drop it. The rest is different because it's a mitzvah. The other objects is on your mind because it's a pain in the neck to hold them. But this is a mitzvah and it's bringing you joy and pleasure, and therefore there's no problem that you are carrying it and holding it during tefillah. Says Rabbi Elazar ben Tzadok, the minhag of the people of Yerushalayim was that they would always carry the lulav with them wherever they went. They left the house in the morning holding the lulav, went to shul holding the lulav, they said Kriya Shema, and they davened Shemoneh Esrei holding the lulav. When it came time to learn from the Torah or to do Berachos Kahana, they put it down on the floor, it says, because they had to roll the Torah and raise their hand. They went to do Bikur Cholim, to visit the sick. They went to console the mourners, always lulav in their hands. When it came to the Beis Medrash, then they sent it home with their son or their Eved or some other messenger, so that they could focus on the learning, because otherwise they would drop it. The Gemara says the point of telling you this is to show much how they were reasoned b'mitzvahs, they were zealous and alacrity.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.